to illuminate the often unseen mental health challenges faced by first responders, police officers, firefighters, paramedics, and 911 dispatchers by sharing their stories, fostering understanding, and promoting resources for support and healing. We aim to break down stigma, advocate for improved mental health services within the first responder community, and inspire hope and resilience. This is the Weight We Carry podcast. Hey guys, welcome to the Weight We Carry podcast. I'm your host, Brittany, and with me today is my amazing husband, Bart. Today we're honored to have Officer Ann Carrizales. Did I do pretty good with it?
You did good. Try it again. Roll the R's and get ethnic with it. Carrizales. Come on.
I knew you were going to say that to me too, and I was like, I cannot roll my R's.
Carrizales.
Bart got you. Bart had you.
Bart can roll his R's. Me. Ann's here today to share her incredible story of survival, resilience, and mental strength. After being shot in the face and chest during a traffic stop, she not only fought back, but she pursued her attackers, embodying the never quit mentality. Now she's using her experience to break the stigma around PTSD and teach first responders the emotional tactics they need to survive, not just in the job, but in life. Ann, thank you so much for taking that time and joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, y'all. Y'all are already a lot of fun, so I can't wait. I can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, since that first phone call, I'm like, this is our girl. Like, she's amazing.
Yeah.
We could not wait to have you on.
Well, thank you. Thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
Thank you. And you have such an incredible story, both in law enforcement and beyond. Can you start by sharing a little bit about your background and what led you into the world of policing?
I know it sounds cliche, but a lot of people that you hear say, you know, I got into police work because it's a calling or it's, you know, it's who I am. I really can tell you that is really true for me. I didn't ever have this cognizant thought, like this thought process of when I grow up, I want to be the po-po. I didn't think that. Like, I didn't grow up wanting to be in law enforcement. I didn't have, you know, little fantasies or dreams of being a cop. Didn't ever dress up like one for Halloween. Never did any of that. What I did experience in my childhood, you know, looking back now, I realized everything about my childhood and the way that I came up prepared me. It kind of guided me to this. So that's why I always say it's basically a calling. It's something that I was born to do. I believe that, and I didn't actually ever utter the words until I sat down in front of my Marine Corps recruiter when I was sitting in front of him enlisting in the U.S. Marine Corps. When I sat in front of him and he said, well, what do you want to do? That's the first time that it ever came out of my mouth. So I said, I want to be a cop. I was like, where'd that come from? But it was, yeah, it's like, what is that? But it was such a natural response. I don't think anybody really had ever asked me what I wanted to do, because if you watched me growing up, aside from all of the other stuff that was molding me toward a life of service, if you watched me, I was all about performing arts. So I actually thought I was going to grow up to be this, you know, famous actress, dancer, singer, performer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, right. From one extreme to the other. I always jokingly say I was supposed to be J-Lo, but without the booty. Yeah. It didn't happen, you know, it didn't happen that I went into that field, but I did go to the School of the Arts in high school, and I was working toward that as best you could back in those days, you know, when you didn't have a whole lot of money and whatnot. But I believe that's what I was going to do until I didn't, until it was kind of right in front of me that this was my calling. So I didn't have that path of I was with, you know, the explorers and this and that. I didn't do that. It was just something that I knew in the moment when someone asked me, and I was outside of the thought process of becoming a performer, that it was what I would do. It was what I was born to do. Yeah. And I never looked back. And so, yeah, that's how I ended up in law enforcement. But I think the trials and the tribulations and the adversities growing up as a kid and you know, as a young woman in the Marine Corps, just, you know, it was always going to lead to this. Yeah.
Awesome.
So law enforcement is what I entered into as a Marine. So I started my law enforcement career in the Marine Corps.
Oh,
But
wow.
in the Marine Corps, at least where I was stationed on Camp Pendleton, we did the dispatch part. We did dispatching and patrol. So one night you might be assigned to patrol this area of the base, Marine Corps base, Camp Pendleton, and then the next time you might be assigned to dispatch. And what ended up happening is a lot of these guys didn't like to work in dispatch. There was a couple. There was a couple that did, but they would always be like, "Hey, will you take my dispatch? I'll take your patrol zone." And I didn't mind dispatching. I like to be out there and get into it.
Sure.
But I really did love the challenge of dispatch. And I say the challenge because it's not always the popular thing to say in a room with a bunch of cops. But I have found dispatch to be much more challenging than police work in a lot of ways. And so I was always, being who I am, I was always welcome to that. So welcome a challenge. So I enjoyed being in dispatch just as much as I enjoyed being on patrol. And I think I've said this before as well. I think it makes me a better cop. I'm a better cop because I'm a dispatcher.
Yeah.
I'm a better dispatcher because I'm a cop. So yeah.
You see both sides of it and why they're asking you this and why you're telling them that. And
right. You can anticipate with these guys, when I'm sitting in dispatch, covering dispatch, even today for my agency, when I'm covering dispatch, I can anticipate what the need is. I can give the pertinent information that I know what we're trained in dispatch to relay, but also the other things they don't necessarily tell you, but your guys need or may could use.
You know what that officer's looking for sure.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
awesome. We talked about it a little bit, but before you were an officer, you were a distinguished career in the Marine Corps,
Yes.
even making history and boxing. And so I was at the gym today and I was watching an old podcast of you, and I learned that you were the very first U.S. Marine female boxer.
Yes. Yes.
Amazing.
So that makes me feel some kind of way. It makes me feel proud and it makes me feel really old.
Heck yeah. That's amazing.
I was the first chick to ever represent the Corps in boxing. That's pretty cool. No, it's a cool thing. It's probably one of my most one of the accomplishments that I'm most proud of is that. Yeah. There weren't women competing for the Marine Corps until this little tiny thing was like, why not? Why not me? I'm a Marine. They're Marines. They compete under the USA Boxing sanctions. There are women competing under the USA Boxing sanctions. Why should the world's most elite fighting force not have female representation? So I was challenging them, boy, just challenging like a little fireball that I was. And then they were like, well, you need to go see the sergeant major. I was like, oh, okay. So I did. And, luckily for me, he sought my way and was like, well, there's no Marine Corps order that says that you can't have a woman. So why, if there was a Marine Corps order, I still say I would have challenged it. I just know myself that way.
There's no doubt.
No, I would have been like, but why? But yeah, no, it was a huge honor for me to have been the first. They now, they've had women since me. And when I was inducted into the All Marine Boxing Hall of Fame, I showed up and I heard whispers as I was walking by a group of other women Marines, and they were like, that's Ann. And I was like, what? What? And then I realized, because, they know because I was the first one. And so I think that's when the realization of what I had done really,
the impact
really hit me. Yeah. And it's super cool, really super cool to have done that. In the Marine Corps, they're not going to hand you anything just because you're cute. You have to earn every bit of anything you earn in the Marine Corps. I earned the title Marine, and everything that comes after, you earn it. And so I feel very proud of that.
It should be. That's amazing. You broke down that wall and kind of paved that way for the other women that wanted to come in and box.
Yes. And there were many after me, some phenomenal athletes, phenomenal fighters. And so to meet some of them at that induction, in that Hall of Fame induction, to meet them was really cool because it really hits you like, dude, you really did something pretty amazing for women. And I'm one of those chicks, like I will embarrass you if I'm cheering you on at any event you're competing at, or if you're getting promoted. Like I'm that,
it's like my mom.
Yeah, I love to cheer when other women are winning. So yeah, it really was, it was a cool thing. It's always been a cool thing to know that I have done that because, no matter what happens, no matter how, far away from sports I get, how many asses I grow, how many years go by, how many wrinkles I get, that nobody could take that from me.
Heck no.
Yeah.
That was you.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So I'm super excited about that. I also learned when I was at that, this is, the woman in me feels like the need to brag. I also learned while I was at that Hall of Fame induction that the Marine Corps had not produced of all of them. I hope I say this correctly. Of all of the men and later women Marines that came through to compete for the Marine Corps, they didn't have a national champ outside of me. The Marine Corps only produced one, and
Wow.
she had a uterus, so yay! So yay me. But yeah, that was kind of cool to learn that, that I did that and then I did that. So yeah.
Heck yeah.
Sometimes I have to look back, Brittany, as women, how we have to do sometimes to kind of remind ourselves, who the hell we are and what we're capable of.
Every softball field that we pass up, I'm always like, hey Bart, at this field I did this, or I played at this field.
She lets me know. She lets me know.
Constant.
Okay, so you too are an athlete. Okay, softball. Nice. I played softball for one season on a co-ed team in the Marine Corps. And it was a lot of fun. And I love softball, but it wasn't like something I feel passionately in love with. But softball is intense.
I loved it.
How long did you play?
I started playing travel ball when I was, I think, 8 or 9 years old. My best friend and I played on a 12 and under team at 8 years old. I played up through college. I played my freshman year of college. I got redshirted because my appendix bursted, and I ended up joining the fire department and stuff. But I was really lucky. My junior year of high school, we won the state championship, and my senior year, we came in second in the state championship. We won the Whitfield championships both years, and then when I was in 7th grade, I got to travel and I played in the European select. Well, I played for Poland.
What?
I'm not Polish, but I played in the World Cup in Lyon, France, and that was it was pretty cool. It was about a week long. I was 13 years old with all these older girls. The coolest part was after that I got to go to Amsterdam, and I stayed with a family. She was on the European Olympic team, so I got to stay in her house for about a month, and I got to practice with them. And I was a catcher, and I'll never forget the first practice. They put me in to catch, and I put my glove up, and I didn't even see that ball come at me. It
was so fast.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't even react. Thank God this lady is an Olympian and could hit my glove because I wasn't moving. Like that's just hit my glove.
You realize you're in the big leagues.
Oh yeah, it was such an experience.
I know traveling abroad to represent your country, or even if you're playing for another team, just traveling abroad to perform at something that you're a badass at, you're top notch at, you're elite level, that you would go out there and they would send you to play with Poland. But I got to compete in Finland.
Oh wow.
Yes. Bart, jeez, you were right. Your wife is a badass.
She's a Hall of Famer too in the high school that she went to.
Oh my gosh, 2 Hall of Famers? What?
She was inducted to the Hall of Fame.
But I have to add in, Bart is a very good baseball player too. We always joke that he has a baseball field named after him.
I don't.
Oh, wow. This is so cool. Wow. This is super
We're very
cool.
competitive, if you can't tell.
I can. And as am I. I think these days I'm 51 now. In my 50s, I think I'm still competitive. My competitive edge though is more like within myself. Like I'm always competing with myself.
Yep.
I just came back from El Paso. I was cheering a friend of mine, a fellow woman in law enforcement. She's a 2-time world champion. Her name is Stephanie Hahn, boxing champion. She comes from a family of warriors and martial artists and champions. And Stephanie Hahn was fighting for her title in El Paso this weekend, and I went to support her. And I got to tell you, sometimes I got to remind myself, bitch, you're 50. Calm down. I could still do it. I know I got it. I still got it in there. Yeah.
You absolutely can. No doubt in my mind. No doubt in my mind.
Yeah. No, some cool stuff. Cool stuff in all of our backgrounds, apparently.
Yeah.
She's way cooler than me.
No. So with all those experiences, how did they help shape your mindset and your resilience you carried into your law enforcement career?
I say this when I'm speaking out there, And I know we'll talk about that later, what I'm doing out there, but I have a program. It's called the Fight After the Fight. And I present that all over the country and outside of the country. And the fight after the fight, I say this when I'm speaking, I say, if I would have known that philosophies and the disciplines that I learned in my fight career and my Marine Corps career, but in my fight career, if I would have known that those things I learned then as an athlete in a boxing career was going to, those lessons, those disciplines were going to serve me later when I was 40 and I was being, ambushed and attacked and shot multiple times. If I would have learned that, I think I would have even tried to learn more than I already was learning. Because when you ask me how did that help me in my law enforcement career, everything I learned in my fight career, and maybe to you guys that makes total sense because you're athletes, and I think you get how an athlete's critical thinking and how their ability to perform at a top level under the pressures of a stress response that competitive sports will have to you, right? If you've never been there, you may not understand it. But as an athlete, I think most athletes understand when I say everything I learned in my athletic career served me in my law enforcement career. My ability to think critically under that type of pressure, the ability to make friends with the stress response and the cognitive decline that one experiences under stress response, right? To make friends with that, to understand how when these things happen and your heart rate goes here, that your body functions start to decline here and this way and that way. You learn how to overcome that to a level where you can still compete, because at the end of the day, as a competitive athlete, that's the goal, right? To win championships, or what the fuck, right? What are we doing? And that was me. I want to win championships. And I remember, saying when I first started boxing and I was watching some live boxing with my then trainer, Tony, I remember saying, I want a jab like that. I want a jab like that. I don't know who I was watching, but I knew that whoever it was, he was putting his jab right through the back of the guy's brain, it looked like. And I hadn't seen another fighter up to that point utilize that jab so effectively. So I remember saying, I want that. But everything that I learned in my fight career and as a Marine, because, I start my fight career while I'm in the Marine Corps, served me in my law enforcement career when I am out there and I'm faced with the dangers that we are faced with in law enforcement. And I feel that stress response. I know what it is. I'm cool with it. I've been there before. And unfortunately, there are a lot of law enforcement officers out there who don't train. They don't train in some type of martial art or, combat sport, any kind of defensive tactics. It's not an area of focus for most law enforcement. And I think that's a problem. But for me, having that fight background, having the experience of training jujitsu off and on, I'm not a diligent trainer of jujitsu, but I get on and off those mats, here and there, and I've got a working knowledge of the basic mechanics of jujitsu, and I'm still an effective and very, very experienced striker. So those things have really helped me in my career. But I would say more than any of that, it's been the mental preparedness that being an elite level competitive fighter has taught me, that I brought into my law enforcement career. The ability to maintain calm when you're like inside, you might be like, oh, she's beating me to the punch. She's stronger. I can't find an answer. Like, or you're nailing her, but the chick will just keep coming. She won't go down. And you're like, but to be able to perform under that type of stress, I think that's a huge advantage to have both as an athlete and as a law enforcement officer.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel like in any career you take, having that mindset, it teaches you a lot. And we always tell our son, he plays baseball, and I'm like, it's much more than just being on the field and playing the game. I was like, you got to learn to listen to your coach, work with your teammates.
Got to be
you're in those
trainable.
stress situations.
Mm-hmm.
I said it'll set you up for life.
Absolutely.
I think being on a team at a young age, and everyone should play a sport at some point in their life. It teaches you so much. I don't care win or lose. I'm competitive.
Right.
We want to win. But
right.
Yeah, it teaches you more than just the game of baseball or the game of hockey.
I also think that it instills in us a certain level of grace. You know what I mean? And being gracious, modest in victory, gracious in defeat. You know what I'm saying? That's why George Foreman was always one of my all-time, well, he is my all-time favorite fighter, George Foreman. Big George Foreman. He's a Texas guy. So George, if you're watching, we should be homies. But anyway, George Foreman is like my all-time greatest, most favorite boxer. And the reason for that was because as I would watch him, he always seemed to be what I just said. He was humble in victory, gracious in defeat. He was so full of grace and class. And I really admired that about him. But if you take those things, as an athlete, like I would be mad if I didn't win. Like I got a silver medal in Finland. I'm still not over that shit, right?
Yeah,
a silver medal. I was like, what? So now I tell
First loser.
now I was like a big fat loser to me. Or I was like, now I tell a big fat fib about that story, and I say, well, I was really tan at the time, and silver went better with my complexion than the gold. But no, I was pretty pissed about it. But I couldn't help but also feel super proud of the woman, the Swedish woman that won the gold, and know that she worked hard for that. And while I didn't feel like I should have lost that fight, I wanted to be gracious and I wanted to be classy,
Absolutely.
So the way that I've used that in my law enforcement career, and listen, there's been times I've been out there on patrol and I've gotten, angry and upset and maybe didn't put my best foot forward. But for the most part, people who've ever worked with me know that, I just have this ability to stay calm when the shitstorm hits. And I do attribute a lot of that to military training. Marine Corps bearing is what they call it. Nothing like having 2 or 3 drill instructors, one on each side of you and one in the front. And they're just getting after it. And you're just like this. You learn that. You learn how to do that. And I think that served me as well in my law enforcement career.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What a badass. What a badass.
You must be a badass too, because you pulled this one over here. You pulled this, tall drink of water named Brittany.
He railed me in.
He did. How did you do that, Bart? Because I'm no offense, Bart, you're a cutie, but I'm looking at Brittany and I'm like, this dude married up big time.
Oh, I'm well aware. She actually pursued me.
Oh, Brittany, you little tart. That's a conversation that we should have sometime.
She acts all coy over there. Nah, she pursued me.
She's like, you gonna be mine.
There we are.
How long have y'all been together?
So our 13-year marriage is going to be coming up. So
wow,
we were together, 15 years? About 15 years.
I met him the day I graduated college.
I love it. I love it.
We ran calls together and didn't really know each other. And then,
yeah,
my brother dragged me to a party the day I graduated college, and he was there, and I was like, hey, who's that guy over there? Like, I gotta get to know him. And then I invited him the next day. We had breakfast with Santa at the fire station. So he stopped down. He stopped down in his uniform, and I was like, yep.
Yeah.
The rest is history.
I'm climbing that tree. That's great. That's great. I love it. I love it.
Oh, man. All right, moving on.
Yeah. You see how I do that? You see how I turn the lens over there?
Love it.
So you've worked in undercover gang investigations, SWAT crisis negotiations, and even field training officer. What drew you to those roles, and how did that prepare you for the challenges you faced in the job?
Well, negotiations is kind of an obvious thing. What drew me to that is I'm not, by nature, I'm not a patient woman. I'm not a patient person by nature. Law enforcement requires you to be patient. And so that's challenging. But I also knew that negotiations, crisis negotiations is truly a craft that you have to hone. And everybody's not cut to do that type of work. It's a huge challenge. So the challenge in and of itself, if it's challenging, it's got my interest. Everybody can't do that. What? That's how my recruiter got me to join the Marine Corps. He's like, oh, not a lot of women make it. I was like, oh, really?
Challenge accepted.
Right. So it looked like a very challenging thing. I looked into it before I submitted to, to be, considered for the position. Um, but it requires a higher level of patience than even, the patience required of any patrol law enforcement officer, right? So that really piqued my interest and was intriguing for me. And when I went through the training, I learned from one of the best. He's now passed, but he was out of New York, and he was amazing. He had a really great reputation, so I was excited to learn from him. And I maintained a relationship with him outside of the training. So once I got certified and all that stuff, I still stayed in touch with him because I wanted to be able to pick his brain. My mama used to say, if you want to be good at something, you surround yourself with people who are doing what you want to do the way you want to do it. So I like to be around people who do what I want to do and do it better, so
Challenge you.
right.
Challenge you
So
for sure.
I would always pick his brain, and I got to be, pretty good at negotiations. And that's not something at the time that I first got into it that I thought I could use as much as I really could. I had this little bit of a mental block, and it wasn't until, Dom said, you can use this every day with every contact you have on patrol. Like this is a superpower that you can hone this craft, and you can use it even when people don't know that you're doing that. So that really served me on patrol. That negotiations training served me on patrol. My favorite role though in law enforcement would have to have been even outside of the gang investigations and things like that I actually started doing in the Marine Corps. So I didn't do gang investigations as a civilian cop. I did gang. In fact, I created an entire program for gang training for the entire base. And I used to give this presentation to the Marines and their units because, believe it or not, we did have a gang issue, with in the Marine Corps. A lot of people are like, what? Yeah, well, you think about it. You got like people from different walks of life. You got all these different kinds of people that join the Marine Corps and they earn the title Marine. And, Marine Corps boot camp is going to break you down, and then they're going to build you back up with the mindset that they want you to have. And they create this machine called a Marine, right? But at the end of the day, you are who you are inside. And some of these people join and become Marines from different walks of life, different upbringings. And sometimes it's hard for them to leave that shit behind. And they eventually kind of get bored or whatever it is they do. And that life starts to kind of creep up, and they try to find, like using Camp Pendleton, for example. It's a huge base. It's one of the largest. But they would go out into the city of, Oceanside, and they would try to find their tribe, their old tribe. Right. So now they're this group, they're in this brotherhood that is called Marine Corps. But, think about it. Not everybody ends up falling in line the way that they should. Same thing with cops, right? Everybody who wears a badge doesn't bring honor to that badge. And the Marine Corps is no exception. So some people earn the EGA, the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. Some people earn the title, but they still fall back on old habits and old ways. And so they don't bring honor to our title Marine. And, that kind of stuff bleeds out into town. They would find their little group of misfits and the riffraff, and then they would try to bring that lifestyle back onto the base. So we had our work cut out for us back then. I haven't been in the Marine Corps since 1998, so I don't really know what that looks like now. But I know that back then there was a need for a juvenile and gang enforcement team, and so I was a part of that. And I really had a lot of fun. But my favorite role has always been the role of the field training officer, FTO. Anybody who knows me knows me. I love that billet. I think it's one of the most important roles that you could ever undertake as a cop, to train little baby cubs. The impression that you leave on them it's a huge responsibility, and it's challenging and it's stressful, and half the time you just want to shake them. But I love it, man. I love it. I love training baby cubs.
It's putting those good officers out there on the street to protect and serve, and that's ultimately what it's about.
Yeah, it's important, right? We want to produce, a new breed of law enforcement officers that continue to bring honor to the profession. And so you got to pour into them. You got to mentor them. It's more than just, checking off the training list, checking off what they can and can't do and what they're not picking up, and, what they're picking up well and what they're not responding to training on. It's more than that. It's about, taking them under your wing, learning how they learn, learning how their brain thinks. Are they visual learners? Are they practical app learners? Or, learning these things, learning them, and then learning them about the way it is to police. I love the challenge, and I love pouring into people. So I think that's why I really thrive in that role. Yeah.
Heck yeah. They're lucky to have you.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
Thank you. So I don't police, full time anymore. I police on a part-time basis as a reserve with my agency. I'm traveling and training and doing all the things. So I do that on the side. But I still, there have been times even with this agency that I've been asked to kind of, hey, will you take this one and, have a day? If you come in, have a day, they may be struggling. And my style of training baby cubs is very different. It's a very different style. I draw from my Marine Corps training, my leadership training that I've learned in the Marine Corps. I draw from my fight career. If I'm in the car with an athlete, I know how I'm going to reach them. So it's about that, learning them. And I love to learn people. So, I don't get to do it the way that I used to back in the day, but I'm happy and proud to say that I've had my hand in the careers of some of the best out there right now. So, yeah.
Awesome.
What an awesome asset you've been. That's so awesome.
Thanks. Appreciate it. It's been an honor. It's been a privilege, really.
Well, Ann, let's talk about October 26, 2013.
No, I'm kidding.
Can you walk us through that day and what started as a routine stop and quickly turned into a fight for your life?
Well, as you know, never routine, right? Nothing is ever routine. You'll do the same things over and over again, but they'll vary their own specific ways. I made this traffic stop on a night that wasn't super duper busy with chaos. We had just processed with a friend of mine that I was on shift with, Brandon. Brandon popped a DWI driver. That was everybody, cops, they all have their little niche, right? Some guys, they're out there and they can sniff a DWI driver from 10 miles away. And they're just really good. That's the fork they know, right? I have met people who are just amazing at, interdiction, right? Drugs, guns, weapons, drugs, gangsters, everybody has their thing. And I like to find, I like to initiate investigations and I like to find guns and I like to find drugs. I like that stuff. And then I didn't really have, even though I worked with gangs before, I didn't really have a huge, massive interest in it. I learned about what I needed to learn about to keep me aware on the streets, but that wasn't my passion. I like to find guns. I really like to find guns on people who aren't supposed to have them. I really like that. But
a challenge.
Yes, it's challenging. It's like a little game of cat and mouse. And then the other thing I really like is when, and I'm really good at actually, is when people throw evidence out of the car while they're driving. Dude, I don't know if it's this schnoz right here, but I can find that shit. I can find it. Like, I don't know what it is. I just I'm going to find this.
Sniff it out.
I remember being out in the rain looking for a gun and they just couldn't find it. And his name was Horn. His last name was Horn. Horn's like, come out here and look for this. I know you can find this. And I was like having a hard time and everybody was ready to give up the ghost. And I was like, I'm going to find this freaking gun. And sure enough, I found that bad boy. But anyway, I pulled over this car after helping Brandon process this DWI driver. So Brandon, my good friend Brandon, drives off to the jail. We had plans to eat. We were gonna have some chow when he got back. We had a little baby cub on the shift with us that I had actually trained at some point, and he was now on his own. So he's a big grown up boy, and he's doing his grown up patrol thing on his own. And we were just the three of us out there. We were actually shorthanded that night. It was the three of us and a supervisor. And we were waiting for Brandon to get back so we could go eat. And, I was supposed to just lay low and not do anything. And so I got in a shooting. I decided that would be the car to pull over. And what's interesting is it's not like what I observed, the activity that I was observing from this car wasn't something super duper like blatantly unlawful. It was just the totality of it all. The stop that I made was more from an investigative position than it was something blatant. Like they of course they violated some minor traffic infractions, but at the end of the day, it was that this car sat through 2 go cycles or so of a red light, and it didn't move. And I watched it as I was driving northbound, way off in the distance. And at that time of the morning, there's not a lot of traffic. It's like 3 a.m. or something. And I could see it, and it had its left blinker on, but it wasn't in the left turning lane. It was facing south in the fast lane. And it sat through this light, and the light cycles green, and then it cycles back to red, and this car doesn't move. So I'm looking at it, because that's going to get any cop's attention. Well, I mean, any cop that's paying attention, it's going to get their attention,
Sure.
right? And I just watched, and I decided that I wanted to know who was in the car, because my brain's already cycling through, what I could potentially be dealing with. Maybe it's a drunk person. They've passed out, maybe they're having a medical emergency. Maybe they're suspects and they're about to, get into some shit, and I should pay attention. So there's a lot of things going on. And I just wanted to know who's in the car. So that's when I decided. I had already made the decision that I was going to initiate some contact. I was likely going to initiate some contact. But when I passed the car, as it's facing me, I pass it this way, and I kind of glanced into it. And when I glanced into the car, I saw there were actually 3 men in there, but I only really focused. I saw the 2 in the front. So I saw the 2 Hispanic men sitting in the front seat, driver, front passenger. And I glanced at them, and then I kind of, I was bobbing my head like this. I was pretending to jam out to some good music, but I didn't actually even have the music up. I had turned the music down. I was super focused, but I was pretending, because I didn't want them to think that I was as interested in them as I actually was. So when I made that U-turn to light them up and initiate the stop, I was thinking that I was going to make this stop because there was likely some issue with the driver being impaired or having a medical emergency. There were cars that had to go around this driver to get through that green light. So there were other things there that I had lawful, probable cause to initiate the stop. But at the end of the day, it was something in here that was saying something isn't right here. Something is just not right. And I need to just take a look. Now, I didn't have the feeling, my spidey senses weren't going off in a way that I was feeling like I was about to get involved in a deadly encounter. But I did feel like somebody needed to initiate contact with that car. So that's what I did. They continued on a little slowly. Have you seen the dash cam?
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched it.
Yeah.
I watched it.
They continued on. And after I'd lit them up, they moved, they continued on slow. We refer to it as slow rolling at the agency. I was like, hey, he's slow rolling. And I believe I say that on the radio, he's slow rolling. But I thought he's probably trying to find a well-lit area to pull into, because it's really dark in this area where I initially lit them up. It wasn't until they passed a well-lit area that I realized, okay, that's not what they're doing. And then they started to make their way into this trailer park, which kind of tells me, oh, the driver probably
They're gonna bail on you or something.
The driver, probably the driver is drunk, and he's either trying to make it home because he may live here, and for some reason they think if I make it home, I'm safe.
I'm in my driveway.
Nope. Yeah, I'm in my driveway. You didn't get me. I made it home. No, it doesn't work that way, right? It's not how this works, right? So I thought he's either going to try to make it home, or his car is having trouble and he's going to try to make it home because he doesn't want me to have to tow it, or they're going to bail. They're going to bail. So they want to get in here and they're going to bail, which was fine. I wasn't going to chase nobody. I was like, the car's here. Here we are. Let's get it towed.
Gonna find the owner. We know who owns it.
We'll find you later, right? Because there's 2 at least that I knew of at the time. They pull over and stop, and then of course that's when I walk up and I make that contact, and we have that little small dialogue back and forth of bull crap that they're giving me and me giving them the questions straight, and they're having trouble answering, and all the telltale signs that were there, the red flags, the pre-attack indicators telling me something's about to go down. And I believe that in my mind, by now I've requested my backup units, but in my mind I thought someone's going to bail. I thought that's what's going to happen. Someone's going to bail out of this car. And my thought process was already thinking about what my response would be when that happened. But it's not what happened. They didn't bail. They ambushed me. I remember that just a few seconds right before the shots were fired, the thing that really, I remember all of it. I remember all of it very, very, very vividly. But what really stands out to me in the moments right before I'm staring down the barrel of a gun was that as I made this approach, the driver was, eyeballing my weapon. So he's making these target glances down at my firearm, and I see it. And I remember understanding, and this is so important, so important. They say communication is key, right? Communication and understanding communication is very important, because if you don't understand communication, you don't understand that the most accurate forms of communication is nonverbal, right? The most accurate form of communication is the nonverbal form of communication. If you ask Brittany, what's wrong? And she's like, nothing.
Yep.
Right? We
The
know
body
that.
language
We know
explains
this.
it all.
It explains it all with our kids who can't even articulate when they're in pain. They're babies. You guys have a child, they can't always articulate that. Sometimes it's all about the body language. And so it's one of the smartest things any cop could ever do is equip themselves with that understanding and sharpen the ability to comprehend those nonverbal forms of communication. So yes, communication is key, but comprehension, that's vital, right?
Yeah.
So I found myself really understanding that's what we were entering into. Okay, we're going to have a conversation, but we're not going to talk about it, which I'm down. I'm good. So I responded by unlocking that first locking mechanism on my holster, because I wanted to also communicate and let him know that, okay, yeah, I see you, but I want you to know I see you, and I'm going to go ahead and give you an answer. It does work, and I am ready with it, is pretty much what I was trying to say. And he understood that, because he kind of melts back in. If you see on the dash cam, and I don't know if what you've seen was the entire shoot, because that video is like not out there, right? I've shared it with, like, when I did Live PD's little show, they did dash cam or something like that. I shared the video. So it has been shown publicly, like on TV shows and stuff, but it's not just out there. You can't Google it up and find the actual shoot.
Right.
But I have that, and you can actually see on that portion of the video, because what's out there publicly is from the moment that I was shot. And you hear me saying shots fired, I'm hit, but you don't actually see the gun battle that we have. So
Correct.
if you were to see that video, and I'm thinking about it now, and I'm like, dude, I should have let you guys see it, right? But if you see that portion, you can actually see all of the things that this driver's doing, all of the rubbernecking, the scanning, all of the distractive things that he's doing with his hands to try to distract me from what's going on in his car. But he stops doing that when I disengage that first locking mechanism. He kind of stops. All of those things are communications, but my response, my nonverbal response, he heard loud and clear as well. So not only did I understand that's what we were doing, but I also understood he understood. And that's the thing. Knowing that he understood, I knew I was dealing with real criminal here, because criminals, they know that.
Yeah, they've done it before.
They've done it before. They know that. They know this. It's almost like this unwritten rule that we have with one another. It's like, you do this, I know you mean that. You do that, I know. And they do it just like we do it. So I always try to teach baby cubs that, like, and remind even veteran officers, remind them of that. Like, they know, just like they know. And so I kind of, was able to pick that up. And then he kind of leans in. He leans in and he mumbles something to the front seat passenger that's right there, sitting right next to him. And I didn't hear what it was, but I recall that it was in Spanish. I heard enough of it. I could tell it was Spanish, but I didn't hear enough of it to really know what he said. And I heard him say something to this front seat passenger, and I was instantly annoyed by it. And now there's a third person in the car. He's sitting behind the driver, next to the nonverbal communications that the driver was doing that I said really stood out to me. The other thing that really stood out to me, and it probably stood out to me first, was that there was a third person, and I hadn't noticed this third person until I made the approach. And when I made the approach on the car, I noticed the third person, and I noticed that the window was kind of like up midway. It wasn't all the way up. It wasn't all the way down, which reminded me of the incident that I'd had the October prior, which was the first on-duty shooting that I'd had.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So that first on-duty shooting in October of 2012, my arm was pinned in a car window by a suspect, and he dragged me down the road. Slammed on the brakes, the glass shattered. I was thrown from the car, and when I hit the ground, I rolled and popped up. And when I popped up, I already had the weapon drawn out, and it was, it's as it should be. It's muscle memory. It should happen without you having to think about it. And so I shot him through the windshield, in his face. So I had just come off that experience the October prior, and the things that I did to prepare myself for what I believed would happen, another encounter, such as I wanted to be ready. So I prepped. I prepped and prepped and prepped. So these two things are standing out to me. I'm having this dialogue, and I realize that that something's about to go down. I didn't recognize, though, or actually recognize is not the right word. I didn't notice that front seat passenger when he whips around from the front seat to the back seat. So that's what he did. My position was at the rear of that rear window. So there's the driver's seat, the passenger behind. If you're standing on the side of the car, like if this is the car, right? Here's the driver, here's the rear passenger. And then over here next to the driver is that front seat passenger. Well, I was standing back here behind this rear passenger window, and the passenger in the car kind of whips around and comes through into the back seat. You have a kid, so I know you'll recognize this, and I say this all the time when I'm trying to describe what this looked like in the car. You ever had to beat that ass from the front seat because your kid didn't know how to act?
I pictured myself whooping around.
Bart's doing it. Yeah, Bart's doing it. See, no, and you're not even doing it right, Bart. I bet Brittany could do it way better. Like
Bart's the driver. I'm the whipper.
He's the driver. Yes, you whip around. That's how you would do it from the driver's seat, right? But when you're not in the driver's seat, and that's where the shooter was. He wasn't in the driver's seat. It was the front passenger seat. So he whips around, and he gets through to the back seat. And before you know it, where my focus was on this front seat driver and this rear seat passenger, going between those two, it's the front seat passenger that whips around, comes in that back seat like he's about to spank that butt, and he comes out with the gun. And so I didn't actually see. It was so fast, and you'll hear cops. I'm sure you guys have heard this before. It's so fast, and it was really fast. He whipped around. Next thing I know, I looked, and I'm staring down the barrel of a gun, and then the muzzle flash shoots out, and the gun shot, and I'm hit right here, and it's that moment of, the dangers that are out there. You know them. You have close calls. You even have thoughts, maybe even dreams in your sleep about the worst case scenario, right? For any cop. I don't think there's a cop out there who hasn't imagined, or had a bad dream that they walk up on a car and they take one right to the grill. And there I was, and it was happening. And so that was my first thought. It's happened. It's happening. It's happening. I knew it. I was like, I knew it. I knew it.
For you, Ann, did that time was it, you said it happened so quickly, but did everything just sort of slow down for you and almost like in slow motion?
Yes. That's a natural stress response. Slow motion, time distortion, as they often refer to it. Time distortion is a very real thing that happens, and you don't have to have ever been in a shooting or stabbing this could happen. You could be in a fist fight, and time can slow down. You could be in a car accident, rolling in a car, and time will slow down. You could just have the literal shit scared out of you, and time will slow down. So this is a natural stress response that can be experienced by anyone. And lucky for me, I experienced this many times throughout Marine Corps boot camp, throughout boxing training, sparring, competitive fights, fights on on the street as a kid, So I had experienced this, but I think I experienced it the most, in my childhood growing up with my daddy. My daddy, we suffered at the hands of my dad's violence for a lot of years. He's a Marine Corps and Army veteran, a Vietnam veteran. My daddy is a war fighter. I speak about him very much because he's a big, huge part of my story, obviously. But we suffered because my father suffered with I'm sure what we'll talk about later. He suffered with the weight that he carried, and and so I got a lot of beatings at the hand of my dad, and so that will also impose that stress response on you, where time distortion kicks in. So in the moment, to answer your question, yes, that is exactly what happens. And in the moment that the time distortion happened for me, it was probably even before the shot was fired, because my brain, your brain is doing everything the brain does. It observes and then it orients itself, right? And it takes in all of the information and then it processes it. And then you have to come out with what your action is going to be. This is where the OODA loop comes in, right? The OODA loop where you kind of get frozen, right? So that did happen prior to, and it was probably at the moment my eyes looked down the barrel of that gun. I believe this is where time slows for me, because I feel like I stared down the barrel of that gun. I stared down the barrel and I watched the muzzle flash shoot out at me, but I didn't hear the gunshot until after the muzzle flash, is what I believe. For a lot of years, that really screwed with my brain, because I couldn't remember. And it really doesn't matter. It's such a small, did you hear the shot and then see the muzzle flash? Or did you see the muzzle flash and hear the gun? Who cares? You got shot in the face, right? But for me, it was something that I really struggled with for some reason. But, as I've done a lot of work, a lot of therapy, a lot of EMDR, a lot of neurofeedback therapy, a lot of things that heal the brain, I believe that I saw the muzzle flash and that my brain was just trying to catch up. Like the Flintstones, when they get in the car. I don't know, you guys might be kind of young for that.
No, I remember it.
The Flintstones, when Fred Flintstone gets in there, and he's like, but
it doesn't go anywhere.
It doesn't go anywhere for a second, right? That's how it feels, man. That's how it feels. It's like, there's a gun. That gun looks really big. Holy crap, that's muzzle flash. Wait a minute. I think I hear the gunshot, and then it's like, oh, shit, that hurts.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of how it went. And then the second shot hits, and I get that second shot on the left side of my left breast, and I feel that one go into my chest. So you're trying to catch up. It was like my brain went slow. Okay, now we're back to normal. Whoa. Wait a minute. Just like Fred Flintstone. Just like trying to get taken off, but your brain is struggling to process, like I say, the shitteth as it flyeth. That's what it feels like. And then there's all of the conversations that now come down on you when you're in a situation like that, which I coin, conversations with yourself. You go into conversations with yourself. And just really quick, without spending a whole lot of time there, the conversations with myself that happened when I took that shot. It's happening. It's happened. Oh, God, my ear. Because my ear was ringing. It was like this, like it was so loud in this left ear. And it was debilitating. I almost couldn't hear my own thoughts. And I remember being distracted with that. And then it was, it's happening. It's happened. And then I got this rush of excitement, undoubtedly adrenaline. But also, I feel like this excitement of knowing that I knew exactly what I was going to be doing, because I had spent the better part of that year between the first shooting to the second, preparing for it. And knowing that I was, okay, it's game time, it's go time. It's like when the bell rings, ding, ding. And you get out there and you might, kind of just feeling each other out, and you're establishing this distance. But it's not till that first exchange of pop, 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 you're like, oh, yes, we are. I'm in a fight here. I'm in a fight here. So it's very, very similar to that. And, everything starts and that conversation starts, and it's me having the conversation of it's happening. It's happened. No, it was, it's happening. It's happened. It's happening. That's the two. I went, it's happened. It's happening. Then the ear. Then it was like, get the hell out of Dodge. Right. So I go to take cover and which is why my arm was up, which is why this side of my breast was exposed. And I took a shot there. And then it manhandles me back. And I'm like, oh shit, that second one was probably a different caliber is what I'm thinking in my brain. And, but in between all of that, my eyes lock into, after the first shot, my eyes lock into my suspect's eyes. And we just lock in. And it felt like we locked in for several seconds, enough time to have a moment. Because while I was looking in his eyes and he's looking in my eyes, I memorized his face. And then I watched his facial expression change from the way that it looked right after the first shot to the way that it looked right before he shot me again. It changed. His facial expression changed. And I watched that happen. My eyes dropped down to the gun. I saw the gun. This is true. This is a true story. I don't tell it like this for like dramatic effect. This is really what happened, what can happen to you when your brain is trying to process this stuff and time distortion sets in and conversations with yourself set in. So if you're watching this podcast and you're listening to it, it would behoove you to start to really go down the rabbit hole of that stress response and try to understand that stress response. And I'm having it and I'm in the middle of it. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, that gun looks just like mine. Oh, this is how it went. Oh, I have a gun like that at home. Oh, no, wait, it's an evidence from my last shooting. I'm having this ridiculous conversation with myself in the middle of a gun battle, a gun ambush. And it made sense to me. I was asked to pick that gun out of a gun lineup. They put these pictures. This is how you know this is true. I couldn't tell this story publicly if it weren't true because I would get called out on it, because this is true. They put these pictures in front of me and they asked me to pick out this gun out of a lineup. And I could, because that time distortion, that tunnel vision was so intense that I memorized not only this guy's face, but this gun. And I remembered that it looked exactly pretty close to the one I had that was now in evidence from that first shooting. And, who cares to correct yourself in the middle of a gun battle? No, it's at home. No, it's in evidence. But that's what the mind is doing, because it's really just trying to make sense of all of this craziness. Wow. And it's just, it's trying to catch up, right? It's trying to catch up. And I do remember that the very last thought I had, because it did feel like forever between when that first shot hits here and the moment that I returned fire, it felt like forever. It felt like I was just having a lollygagging little conversation with myself. It felt like forever from the time I got shot the first time to the time I returned fire, but it really was very quick. But I had to give myself a pep talk. And I used to do this stuff in the ring all the time. But I said, you're in a gun battle here, girl. Any day you want to start shooting. Yeah, because it felt like I wasn't doing shit. But I was a little busy getting shot. And I had to talk myself out of that. Like, hey, you're in a gun battle here, girl. Any day you want to start shooting. I'll never, ever, as long as I live, till I leave this earth, forget that thought. Hey, any day you want to start shooting. And I remember feeling that way in the ring too. Like, hey, she's beating you up here. You want to punch? Maybe throw a jab? Something? So yeah, it's a crazy time. It's a crazy thing, that what your mind's trying to process.
I don't even know. I can't even. Seriously. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't even. Woof. I'm blown away. I'm blown away by you here, Ann. Seriously. So you said you were shot in the face, in the chest. Yeah. Yet you still returned fire.
Yeah.
And pursued your suspects there. Like you said, that level of focus is almost superhuman. what do you think allowed you to push through that pain and keep going? I'm going to think it's going to fall back on all your training in your Marine Corps and then training for that critical incident that happened. I'm assuming that's where you're going to go with that.
Well, it's all of it. Yeah, it's all of it. Why was I so effective as a fighter? How did I become a champion? Well, yes, obviously I was disciplined and I did the training and I was coachable, trainable, and I showed up to train, way more than probably I ever needed to. But I can't just say it's the fight career. I can't even just say, although I think this is a huge part of who I am as a human, is I'm a Marine, period. End of story. I'm a devil dog. I'm a jarhead. I am that. But I would be doing my life story a disservice if I didn't say, no, this goes way back. This goes way back to that little girl, me, that was trying to make sense of what was happening with my father. I understood that something, he was all in one piece. He didn't have any physical injuries to speak of, but I was instinctively, intuitively, whatever you want to call it, I knew something wasn't right about my dad, because in between these episodes of violence, I had a lot of love for my dad. I knew my daddy loved me. There was never a question. To this day, I'm in love with my father. My daddy is my hero. I say it. I've said it publicly many times. But he is. He is really, the first example that I ever had, and that we really have a choice in what we do with our pain, what we do with our traumas, what we do with that shit sandwich that we were dealt, he was the example. My father changed his life. By the time I was 13, my father changed his life. He became a minister. He began to counsel other people on the same issues that he struggled with. And I think it takes an incredible sense of self and faith. So, what allowed me to handle it that way? It goes all the way back. Why was I a good fighter? Why was I a good champion? Because in my brain, I always said, well, there's not a woman on this planet Earth that can beat me up the way my dad did. Now, I know that sounds kind of fucked up, right? It does. Yep. But it's actually incredibly beautiful and powerful to be able to come to a point in your life where you can look at the crap things, horrible things in your life, the traumas, when you can look at them, when you can make friends with them, when you can make peace with them, and then you can use them as powerful, powerful ammunition to put down range, right? I took that stuff and I used them in ways that were going to empower me, to take any fear of being beat up in the ring out of me. I was not afraid to fight anyone. I knew that nobody would hit me as hard as my dad. So that changed my mindset and took the fear out of being hit. I didn't want to be hit. Clearly, I needed to train defense so that I took as few shots as I could, but I wasn't afraid. That empowered me.
Sure.
And I became a champion fighter. Becoming a champion fighter also empowered me in my law enforcement career, professionally and personally, because all of the challenges that I have faced in that ring that I was able to overcome, I was able to make adjustments to strategies that I had worked on for 8 weeks or more sometimes to prepare for a fight. And then you get in the ring and shit doesn't go the way you planned for it to go. Like my pro debut, when I realized, wait, my opponent is left-handed? Right? We missed that memo. And it's a very important thing to know, right? Good Lord. So, making those adjustments right in the moment, you have to be able to do that. And, the Marine Corps prepared me for that. My athletic career prepared me to do that. My childhood made me more resilient. And then you get into a situation like I got into, and you apply what you've learned. There was nothing in that moment that I leaned on that came from police training. It really was everything else. My fight career, my Marine Corps career, the woman that I grew up to become as a result of my wonderful parents. My mother is one of the strongest women I know. And she poured into me. everything that she felt that she was deficient in terms of being a strong woman or an assertive woman or an independent woman. She poured that into me. And I believed her, every word of it. And so that has everything to do with what happened that night. It could be hard for some people to understand until you hear me break it down this way. But I do this because I feel like it's important for us as human beings to be able to embrace that shitty stuff and realize that it could make you really 10 times,
You
the
turn
best
it
versions.
into your own power. You turn it into your
Yeah,
power
for
sure.
sure. I mean, think about it. Like all those losses, Brittany, that ball that came at you so fast that you were like, damn, if she didn't save my behind, if she didn't have, I might not have these pretty teeth right now, right? Like, you think about those things, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. All of those little lessons that we learn along the way that you might even think are insignificant until you're in the moment where you realize, well, that really saved me or that served me. So I came into that deadly encounter feeling ready, and I handled that deadly encounter feeling like I handled it the best that I absolutely could, considering the element of surprise that is the ambush. But it was the aftermath that I had not prepared for at all, and that is the part that really kicked my ass.
It's going to lead us right into this in those days and weeks after the critical incident that you were involved in. When did that really sink in, both physically and emotionally? And it's like, wow, I survived this. Now what am I going to do?
So I've talked to thousands of officers across the country, and I know that everybody's aftermath of an incident like such as this is different, but there are a lot of similarities that we share. Excuse me. That first shooting, I didn't feel any kind of way. Like I didn't feel necessarily that I struggled. I felt like I looked at it more from the perspective of how I can improve, because there were things that I thought I needed. First of all, why the hell was my arm in the car window any damn way, right? So there's that, because they tell you that's like policing 101. So it was about this debriefing that I was having with myself to, okay, like I would do with my fight career. Why did I lose that fight? What did I do wrong? What do I need to improve on? What could I have done better? And so I looked at that incident in the same way. I didn't feel necessarily that I was struggling emotionally after that first shooting. But looking back now with all the experience and the knowledge and things that I have under my belt now, I realized that the red flags were there. I just didn't know. I didn't have the ability to recognize that stuff. So I didn't. After the second shooting, I was on this high of being alive. They often refer to this as being on autopilot, or you staying in survival mode. What people don't realize is that little adrenaline rush that you experience when something like this happens, when the event is super traumatic and it's very critical, and there's been this massive event like a shooting where someone's trying to kill you or something like that. The parasympathetic nervous system, which offsets everything that the sympathetic nervous system does. And for those who are listening that don't know, the sympathetic nervous system, the easiest way to explain it is it's that part of your nervous system that activates, that sends all of the signs to the parts of the brain that are going to say, hey, time to stay alive, threat, 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 right? Like that is the sympathetic nervous system's job. And the parasympathetic nervous system is the one that comes in when you have gotten through the event, whatever that is. Say you almost just got run over by a bus because you didn't look both ways, and you go to step in the road, you hear the horn and get the horn, and the parasympathetic nervous system, as you turn to look, tells you you're about to get run the fuck over, right? Get out of the way. And you jump back and you miss this bus by inches, right? And you're like, and your heart's beating out of your chest, and you get all the goosebumps, you know what I mean? Because you're like, holy moly, right?
Yep.
And then after you kind of collect yourself a few minutes, the parasympathetic nervous system comes in and it calms everything down. It says, okay, easy, Dynamo, you made it. namaste, brother, right? Like that's what the parasympathetic nervous system does. And it just kind of brings the heart rate down, it calms the adrenaline down, and all that extra, oxygen and glucose and all the things that happen when you go into that fight or flight mode. Well, when someone goes through something extremely traumatic, sometimes that parasympathetic nervous system can't just come in and do its job, because the brain quite possibly has gone through something so traumatic that it can develop somewhat of a psychological brain injury that's known as post-traumatic stress injury, right? Mm-hmm. But before that point, there's post-traumatic stress. And most of us have dealt with stuff like traumatic at times, and post-traumatic stress issues are stuff that we have to mitigate and navigate through. So that's where I was. So in the very beginning, it was this like shock to the system, and my adrenaline was still pumping. So for the first, I want to say 2 weeks, I was still riddled with adrenaline. And people I didn't know you could have an adrenaline rush that lasts that long. You absolutely can. But that's what happens when the brain, its ability to calm down, because that nervous system is just pretty much janky at this point because of this massive event. You can experience that your body is flooded with adrenaline for extended amounts of time, right? And that's what was happening. I was on this high, I'm alive. I was excited to be alive. I was like, by the hair on my chinny chin chin, I am here. Yay me. Boom. Life is good. I could smell rain, and I was like, the rain is so beautiful. You know what I mean? I remember one day I was like, it's so beautiful outside, hon. My ex-husband was like, babe, it's dark and gray. It's about to thunderstorm. But to me, that shit looked beautiful.
It's that dopamine dump.
Correct.
That dump of dopamine.
Correct. Sure. And I'm alive, right? So I was in that phase for a good bit. Even when it started to calm down, I feel like I didn't. It was a delayed onset of post-traumatic stress. Delayed onset. If you are listening and you don't know what that is, go down the rabbit hole. Educate yourself. The delayed onset is exactly that. It's a delayed response. It's like the kidney punch. Pop you in the kidney. It lands. And for a couple of seconds, you think, they didn't land it wrong. You know what I mean? It's a delayed response. So that's exactly what I was experiencing. So I want to say it was probably like 6 months before I really started to feel like, I'm having a real problem. Now, that's not to say that I wasn't experiencing things. There's sleep disruptions, the change of appetite, the gut health goes kind of janky, and I felt like nauseous all the time. I felt nervous stomach all the time. I felt like I could cry all the time. And it only got worse. But I was able to, like a lot of military and a lot of cops do, and a lot of elite level athletes even are good at this, because we fight and compete through injuries, and you suck it up, buttercup, right? I did. I sucked it up until I just couldn't. And it was the summer of the following year that I had the first of what would be many a love affair with really bad panic attacks and anxiety attacks. And from there, it just happened very quickly. So it was this delayed onset of probably 9 months, maybe a little less.
Wow.
When I had that first panic attack, I ended up face down on duty, full uniform, gear on. I was passed out on the cement because I couldn't breathe. I thought I was having a heart attack. It very much felt like I was having a heart attack, because the pain in my chest and the numbness in my face, everything was telling me, yeah, you done got so fat,
Big one.
yeah, this is it. I'm coming home. Like Sanford and Son, I'm hollering, hey, this is it. I'm coming home. But yeah, it wasn't. It was the buildup of that unresolved traumatic stress, and it had just gotten me. It knocked me on my ass. This is what I refer to as the opponent. The opponent that is post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic stress injury. And I think the main problem with people like military and law enforcement is that we know how to handle threat. We're trained to do it. But when we detect threat, we identify threat, and then we eliminate threat. But what happens when you can't identify it? Well, you don't know where it's coming from. It's a problem. And that's the thing about this opponent. It's sneaky, and it doesn't have a life form. And so it doesn't show itself to you outside of you. So You can't see it outside of you. You are the only form that it takes in your anxiety and your depression and your increased rage and anger, in your inability to sleep, in your reckless behaviors, coping mechanisms, drinking, reckless sexual behavior, gambling, whatever it is. It's all coming from you,
Yep.
which could in turn confuse the person who's trained to identify threat to think, well, fuck, I'm the threat. I'm the problem. I'm the reason why my spouse is so pissed. I'm the reason why my kids are walking around on eggshells around me. I'm the problem. I know I did. That was me. I was not winning that fight. I didn't have the punch combination to respond to what I was getting. And because of that, I got my ass kicked for a lot of years, and I didn't have an answer. So I stopped trying to win. And that's very different from who I am as a person.
Yeah.
So that was terrifying for me, for my loved ones. And when you go long enough with unresolved stress and traumatic stress, it will rear its ugly hand at the people you love the most. So once it's attacked you and broke you down, it's going to step right on the hell over you, and it's going to look down at you and give you a little wink and
On the next person.
on to the next person. And those are people you love the most, your spouses, your kids, your pets. You know, my dog was affected. Like, his hair was falling out. He was gnawing chunks of hair. I was so riddled with angst and anxiety because his mama was a mess.
Yeah.
So the reach is far and wide, and it's why I make it my mission to teach people about this, because it didn't have to be that way. We lost, my family and I, my ex-husband and my 2 children, we lost about a decade of our lives. That. Yeah. And it was scary. And I realized, I didn't have the answer. I didn't have the tools. I hadn't trained. I didn't prepare for this. And so then I had to really tap into that champion, that person, that Marine that says, no, we don't die here. We don't give up. This is not who we are. It's not what we do. You keep punching. You're just going to have to figure it the hell out. And so that's what I did. I had to figure it the hell out. And that took a lot of time too. Yeah.
Sure. You overcame it. I see you're just a badass woman, man. You're a badass.
Now listen, that that may very well be, right, you're badass. Yep. Okay. But I want you to know, like, this badass hid in closets to cry and hopped in the car to leave to go buy milk that we already had in the fridge, because I needed to get the hell out of the house, because I felt like I couldn't breathe, because I felt like I even identify with people that were closest to me. I didn't know what the hell was going on. I thought I was going nuts. And the beauty of it is that a lot of badasses experience that. There's a cost. It comes with a cost.
Sure.
We pay a price. And so to look at someone that's going through something like that, particularly yourself, because that's usually what we do. You don't look at me while you hear me talking about what I've endured and think I'm weak. But if that's us, when we're going through it, it's like, oh, why am I being a little punk? Why am I? And we talk so much crap to ourselves because we're having this human response. It's very much a human response. But the problem is that we don't talk about it, and we don't often train our law enforcement, our first responders, our military for this fight. So we're not prepared for it.
And that's the big thing. A lot of first responders don't talk about it, and that's surrounding the stigma that we all know all too well, unfortunately. I know you realized that you were struggling and you were having these panic attacks, but what pushed you to then start speaking to the public? And, was that just personal therapy for you? That was a good coping mechanism that you had, was to reach out to others so they wouldn't be suffering through what you were going through?
Well, I started speaking the summer after the shooting, actually. It was never something that I aspired to be, this international public speaker. I was not thinking that. It was just that I was asked to come speak at the Texas Gang Investigator Association's gang conference. It's one of the largest, if not the largest, gang conference in the nation. And they asked me to come tell my story. And I was like, okay. So I went and did that. And when I first started the public and then it just didn't stop from then on out. So by the summer of 2014, I'm already speaking, but it was not what it is today. It was not the fight after the fight. It was almost like a debriefing. Like, you've ever been to a debriefing as a dispatcher, you hear these debriefs and I love them. I love them. Anytime I'm at a conference speaking, if there's something on the schedule that I can go to and it's a debriefing, I love to go. I love to hear that. So that's what I was doing. I was just talking about the shooting, about what happened. I dissected it tactically. We talked about it. I answered some questions. There might have been like, a little question here or there about what were you thinking of this or that, but we didn't touch on this shit. Why not? Well, I wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
I wasn't there yet. I hadn't even begun to scratch the surface of the fight after the fight. And when I started to, it was so easy to chalk it up to other shit, like all these massive headaches that I'm getting every day. Well, it's a stressful job, people are dumb. That's people are so stupid, when we hang up that phone. Yes, we'll get some officers out there, ma'am. Just don't worry, I should,
No hot mics, no hot mics.
That's not what we do. Hey, that's not what we do, viewers. We don't do that. But yeah, so it's like, that's what you chalk it up to. Like, oh, it's the stress. People are dumb, right?
Yeah.
Why am I getting so angry? Why am I completely going into fury rage up here over this person not using a signal light and it's annoying down here, but I'm getting mad up here. It's easy to say, oh, because people are stupid. I'm so tired of dealing with people that are so stupid, and it was easy to chalk it up to other stuff. So it wasn't for a bit, like I said, that I started to realize like, okay, you can't, my son says this. I realized at one point I couldn't talk myself out of a panic attack, out of a stress response. Why? Because it comes from the autonomic nervous system. Auto. You have no control. It's auto. You can't control it. What are some of those things? The way heart rate goes, our respiratory, our breathing, our sexual responses. These are things that we cannot control because they're controlled by that part of the nervous system. And so I didn't know anything about this stuff. So I'm realizing that I can't control my emotions the way that I used to. Fatality accident, dead bodies everywhere. All right, it's time to work. You've got someone screaming in your ear. You hear them get shot or shoot themselves. All right, we got to let these officers know. And then, oh, guess what? The other 911 line's ringing. We got another call to take.
Yeah.
You just move on. And I was having trouble doing that. And when I was speaking, I wasn't touching on any of that stuff. But it started to rear itself because, again, the autonomic nervous system, right? So what started happening was that as I'm showing the dash cam video, having this physiological response to it. So one of the things that happens when you get that stress response is that your mouth gets dry, right? So I would reach for my cup of water, and I would reach for my bottle of water, and my hands would be trembling like this. So I didn't want people to see that. So I wouldn't reach for the water.
Oh, wow.
And I remember one day somebody in the audience up front was like, here, she stood up and she's like, you need some water. And I was like, oh, I'm good. Thank you. But my mouth was so dry that my tongue was sticking to the roof of my mouth and I could barely speak. My throat was closing. I was like, man, you can't do it. It's done. You're done. The gig is up. Everybody can see this. And I'm like, so I stood there, and this is when everything changed. I stood there and I was like, I wish I could remember where I was. I looked at the audience and I was like, reached for that water, held up my hand, and I was like, y'all see that? Everybody was like, yeah. And I was like, right? I just took this water down. I'm like, everybody was like, damn, give her another bottle, right? I was like, for the last 2 years, I have wanted to drink that water, but I didn't want you guys to see me shaking.
Yeah.
I didn't want them to see me having this response, but it's the most natural thing. And they're all looking for it because they're thinking, why is she not having it? Why am I having it?
Yeah.
Because a lot of these men and women are sitting in the audience looking at my dash cam, but they are having the physiological response to it.
Yeah.
So why is she not? And then one day I just couldn't hide anymore. And I said it I'm trembling. I taste blood in my mouth sometimes, metal. Sometimes my face hurts. Sometimes, a lot of times when I would speak, people could see I would do this or I would do this, because I would literally start to ache here.
Yeah.
It was just the most fascinating thing. And it wasn't until that moment that I came out and said, I'm, I'm screwed. I'm having this response. I don't know what the hell, right? That I started to realize that not only did I need to acknowledge it, but they needed me to acknowledge it. They now felt seen. They now felt like I felt when I watched my dad do it. Like, oh, I do have a chance in hell at this. All I have to do is acknowledge it. She's acknowledging. So then it just kind of went from there. I started to realize that so much of what I needed to be saying when I stood in front of these people was not about this damn shooting necessarily. So much of it was about this part. Why the hell I felt like I couldn't reach for a bottle of water when my tongue was like sandpaper, because I didn't want them to see my hands shaking. This is the problem. And if you continue to try to hide from it and not acknowledge it, then you're just part of the problem. So I called myself
keep
out.
rearing its ugly head, no matter what.
Yeah, I just called myself out on it, and it changed. And eventually, the fight after the fight was born. And I go there. I talk about all of it. And I cannot tell you how therapeutic it's been for me.
Awesome.
How therapeutic it's been for, I know, a lot of people, because I get the emails, I get the messages. But more than anything, it's my mama bear. I talk about my kids, my throat closes up and I get all, right? I get all mama bear. But more than anything, I think that what it's done for me is it's turned me into a parent that was no longer just telling my kids what to do. I was showing them. And I didn't realize, I think a lot of parents don't realize how much their kids watch and understand. And so while I had already shown them parts of me that were not my finest hour, I was not putting my best foot forward, I was hurting them with my words because I was struggling and I was spiraling and I was angry and I was afraid. I couldn't say that I was afraid and I was struggling. I felt like I couldn't say it. So they were seeing this not so great version of me. But now, with me stepping into that vulnerability and acceptance of my now normal, I was showing them how to do it. And I was showing them a different version of their mother that they could see through another lens and start to understand. And I think that was pivotal. It was pivotal for our family. Once I made my mind up to handle my business, to do the work. Once I realized I was in a fight that I was going to have to fight back to win, then something switched in me and I was like, I know that. I know how to do that. Yeah. I know how to do that. What the hell am I so worried about? I know how to do that. But it took time to get there.
Well, now your children are part of the Fight After the Fight series.
Yes, they are. They are.
What is it like for them to witness your struggles, and how did their perspective shape your journey?
Oh, that's a good question. Say it again. Those are two good questions. Say that again. I want to hear it again.
Yeah. So your children are now part of the Fight of the Fight series. Mm-hmm. What was it like for them to witness your struggles, and how did their perspective shape your journey?
It was so horrible for them to witness my struggles, and it was so beautiful for them to witness my struggles. Damn you, Brittany. Ask me anything, she said. My son, he wrote a paper. He's, in college. He wrote a paper about mitigating suffering, like the beauty of suffering and how we need that as humans. We spend so much time trying to run from that, but we truly need that. And when I read that paper, I realized he was watching. He was watching. So he sees the pain and the beauty in it, which makes my heart happy because I see it too. But this lump in my throat is because I'm their mother and I still hurt and feel sad for them that they had to go through that pain. I don't want them to ever, I don't think any good mother wants to hurt their children, right? But I know I did. And I know they went through a lot of pain. So to answer your question, it was very painful for them. It was very difficult for them. My son was a high school senior and then high school senior during the first shooting, and he was freshly graduated when the second shooting happened. My daughter was 8 and then 9. Very big age difference. One's a girl, one's a boy. So the Fight After the Fight series that is through a child's eyes. So it's Fight After the Fight through a child's eyes. You hear these two perspectives. It's super powerful because these two perspectives are very different. And it's always fascinating to me to see who resonates with whom, because it's not, you think the old tatted up gang cop is going to walk up to my son because he resonates with this young man. And that's not who what he resonated with was something that my young woman daughter said. So it's always really interesting to see that, but it was tough for them, but it was beautiful for them. And they had a lot of work that they had to do. I had a lot of work to do to right those wrongs, but in watching me do it, I think that I know that it gave them hope that it could be done. You can win. My son says he has very little tolerance for people who wallow in self-pity. Like, listen, there's times you're going to have to give yourself grace, and you're going to have to lay in your foxhole and lick your non-visible wounds because you're human. But nothing changes if nothing changes, right? You can either, what are you going to do? You're going to start punching back, or you're just going to give up. So I know that they've learned those lessons through that pain. The beautiful thing is that while it's hurtful for me to reflect on their pain that they had to endure, I'm proud of them because I've seen them. I've watched them turn their pain into power. I've watched them turn this shit sandwich into a filet mignon. You know what I mean? I say that. It might go in a shit sandwich, but it's coming out of filet mignon, right? So I watch my kids do that. And so you can't help but be proud for that, right? You can't help but be proud for that. And the second part of the question was after the kids.
How did their perspective shape your journey?
Their perspective shaped my journey. It's interesting you asked me that question because, we've had lots of conversations, my kids and I. We have lots of really deep, some of my favorite, the most favorite people on this planet for me to have conversations with are those two kids. I love it. Sometimes I wish that the cameras were on in my podcast room when we were having these conversations, because I'm like, geez, I wish that was recorded, because we have great conversations. They're very deep thinkers, both of them. But I still, even through all those conversations, I did not know a lot of their perspective until they started presenting with me. And when they started presenting with me and I started hearing more of their perspective, it changed and shaped mine. Like it changed the way that I did things. The way that it changed me was that, it validated that I was doing something right. You don't look at you look at 40 and 50-year-olds, 30, 40 and 50-year-olds that are still struggling to try to put pieces together, because let's just face it, trauma is tough. When you don't have people to show you the way, it's tough. But you really don't ever get to see a 21-year-old girl or a 30-year-old young man. And, they were even younger. Well, I started seeing this when my daughter was a late teenager, 18, 19, 20. When you don't really see that, when you're like, damn, you got it. You're getting it. You're doing the damn thing. So when I see them doing the damn thing, when I see them calling themselves out on their own shit, when I see them come back to home plate, mom being home plate for guidance, when my son tells me, you're my compass, you're my peace, when I get a little chaotic up here, when my daughter says, Mom, I need your bosoms, I need your bosoms. She says, Mommy, I need your bosoms. And I just go, here you go. She lays her head right here. When you see that, that for all the things I did wrong, I did some shit right. And so it motivates me to continue to seek growth. It reminds me that I'm not done. That I have 2 children that understand my vulnerability, that embrace my vulnerability, that appreciates that side of me. So I don't ever want to deviate from it. I want to continue to grow so that I can pass this down to them, and I want to continue to learn. And sometimes when I'm looking at them, those are the people that I'm learning from, and that makes me really, really proud.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So without getting into it too much, when our son was 6 years old, he was in kindergarten, and Bart got very sick, and Bart almost passed away, and it was very hard. And starting this podcast, we're like, this is kind of, it gives our missions to give everyone the platform to tell their story, but it also helps us because we're talking about it again, and it's helping us heal. And now that our son's in 5th grade, he's graduating elementary school, and Bart recorded a podcast yesterday, and I actually didn't record because our son was just having a hard day and he needed his mom. And I took him out and I said,
I know, girl. Yeah.
I said, it's a beautiful thing. I said, even though it's stirring up those emotions back in you, and I feel that knot in my chest that I did when he was sick and not knowing if he was going to come home. I said, I know it's stirring up those emotions again. And now that he's a little bit older, he understands it a little bit more.
Yeah.
I said, it's hard to talk about. I said, but what a beautiful thing as you started kindergarten and this traumatic event happened. And you didn't really, we tried to shield it a little bit, but you knew daddy wasn't home for 2 months, like what's going on. To you're graduating elementary school now, and we can talk about this, and we can continue to heal and show our journey and show how strong of a family we are, that we can heal from this and help others. And I told him, I said, he told me he watched our first episode, which was us two talking. And I had that feeling when he was like, I'm having a hard day. And I said, did you watch our episode? And I said, just, daddy's so strong now, and we're helpers. And he already says that at 11 years old, he said, Mom, I want to be an Army Ranger. I want to become a paramedic. I want to become a firefighter. And I was like, it's in your blood. You're there to help people. And and here we are using an event that, it still hurts us, and using that platform to heal, and just like you did, and traveling. And if you don't turn those events into something,
and
then he's worth nothing.
He's in a beautiful position. He's young, and he I think we spend a lot of time trying to shield our children from pain and things, but the beautiful thing is that if you could teach him to, through talking, through communication, through comprehension, through understanding of trauma and stress, it's like, wow, this near-death thing happened, and it's horrible, but it's also beautiful. And I'll be honest with you, Brittany, there's not a day that goes by that I don't think that I was almost dead. And it's the little things, when my daughter made choir and she came out dressed in her little white shirt with her black vest and her bow tie for her first choir thing. And I saw that, and I'm a big old sap these days, because these little things are so
important.
Yes, they're so, so important. And to let them see the vulnerability, and to see the power that's in vulnerability at this age that he is, that's a beautiful thing. What a gift that you're giving him. You know what I mean? It's like, let him feel that. Let him feel that, and let him know that it's a beautiful thing to feel. Take the fear away out of that kid as much as possible. Take the fear away from feeling things that are hurtful sometimes. That's what if I had to do it all over again with my children, I wouldn't have hid it. I wouldn't have hid in a closet to cry. I'd have just cried. I still cried to this day. I'm listening to you talk about this, and I want to cry for you, and it's like, but wow, what a beautiful, beautiful opportunity to take pain and turn it into something powerful. What a beautiful opportunity for you to look at Bart, and for Bart to look at Brittany, and for you guys to look at your boy and go, you go, I go, baby. Like, you go, I go. This is about you go, I go. What does that mean? Well, this is what that means. You know what I mean? And And I think it's wonderful. I don't think that I would, well, I know this because I've been asked this, would you change anything? Would you change it? Would you
Never,
change that almost dying thing?
never. It was a rebirth for me,
Yes.
and
I,
it
I wouldn't
absolutely
either.
changed my life.
Yep.
It
And
absolutely changed my
something
life
changes
for
in
the
you.
better.
Yeah. Something changes in you. Like you will be able to identify with me and even you, Brittany, because you navigated that with your husband, right?
She handled it.
Yes.
She handled
So
that
so
business.
you will be able to identify me when I say when you stare your own mortality in the face, it changes you to the core, to the fiber of your soul. I am a different person. And I had to find a way to rebuild this person, but I did find it. I try to show people how to do it, but at the end of the day, they have to do it, right? But it
Yeah.
changes you. And I like this person. So if somebody said, and it's been asked of me, if you could change it, if you could get behind that car and know that all of this would happen to you, your kids, you're going to lose half your left breast, you're going to lose half your earlobe and go through all these surgeries, you're going to have to get reconstructive surgery, your kids are going to stress, blah, 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 you'll end up divorced, da, da, da. Like, if you could change it and not pull that car over, somebody said, would you still pull that car over? And I said, absolutely. I would not change it. I would not change it because it's so beautiful. Like the journey has been so beautiful, even in the most difficult of times. And the way that I have grown with these kids, the adults that they're growing into, the relationship that I have with my ex-husband, it's beautiful. It's beautiful because it is still very much you go, I go for our family dynamic.
Yeah.
I have a new love in my life that it's a beautiful thing because it's actually from my past. We were actually in a relationship when I was 21,
Oh, wow.
when I knew nothing about the things I know now. And it's funny, because reflecting on why that relationship didn't work, because there was nothing bad that happened. Why the relationship didn't work? Oh, because I had gone through something traumatic. I was sexually assaulted in the Marine Corps. I met him not very long after I had my son. I was just under 3 years from that traumatic experience. Um, I threw myself into my son. I was a single mom, and I met this man, and we were together, and we started a life together. And then I felt like there were times where there was a sadness that would come over him. Hindsight tells me that maybe he was dealing with a little depression, or maybe he was dealing with vicarious trauma, secondary traumatization as a result of his close relationship with me, who was definitely traumatized. And I wanted shit all to do with anything that made me sad.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to touch it, leave it. So if you're going to be sad, I'm out. And I was gone. And what's crazy is that if I didn't ever pull that car over, I didn't ever have this happen, I wouldn't have the strong bonds with my children that I likely wouldn't have that I have now. I certainly wouldn't be this version of myself now. I wouldn't seek growth all the time. I wouldn't find the beauty in the dark clouds and the shitty weather.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have the understanding and the compassion of other people. So I wouldn't have the level of forgiveness that I have. I forgave the man that shot me. We had a face-to-face conversation. I wouldn't have the strong relationship post-divorce that I have with the father of my children. I wouldn't have all of these things. And I wouldn't have the second chance at a love from 30 years ago. Who gets that kind of a do-over? You know what I mean? So it's like,
It happened for a
it
reason.
happens for a reason. So if anybody who's listening to your podcast, and to you guys, even in the moments that you're questioning, you know, something, because I know you, Bart, I know what you must go through, and the days sometimes aren't always beautiful, and you don't always see the beauty in it. And sometimes it's just not a good one. And Brittany, and it's stressful, like just the personal experience of what you went through, and then the jobs that you do, and then
Sure.
the everyday life stressors, right? So like even during those days, to just reflect back and go, God, but I haven't made, I'm here. Um, I'm humble, and I respect this gift of life. It's like, shit, I wouldn't change it. I don't think I even would like myself to go back to the person that I was. I'm not sure I'd like myself. I was
I
kind of
say it all the
cynical.
time. I say it all the time because I always bring the story up after I was sick and when I was sick and in the hospital, Britt said, she said she prayed every night to God that I would come out of the hospital. And she says if she was like making a deal, she was making a deal with God to say, if you let him out, he's going to do something good. Like I said, it was a rebirth. I even say that old Bart is dead. He couldn't survive that anymore. And now I was like, we were sitting in bed and she's like, well, we're going to do something good. And I think this podcast, it really is. This is the reason that obviously I want to take care of my family and my wife and my son. But I think the focus is this podcast because it's such an important thing for people like yourself and any other guest, and for us, it's healing. And to be able to give that platform to other first responders, that's why we're here. That's why we do it, because it gives us a voice and it lets everyone know that it's okay not to be okay. And it's okay to feel like you're weak, but you really aren't, because we reach out for help and that shows that you're really strong.
I agree. And I feel like maybe, I don't know, I haven't gone through your steps, episodes, but I'm curious now to do that. So I'm going to do that. But how many, you guys got plenty of episodes dropped already, or?
So you are technically number 7, but we have 30 people.
Yeah. You have the content.
Confirmed.
Yep. Gotcha.
So
have you ever told your story?
So actually our very first podcast, it was very raw, and it was just Brittany and I and opening up about our story. And we wanted to be vulnerable and to do that because we're like, well, if we're not vulnerable and if we're not showing our true, being so transparent about it, no one else is going to come on the show and be transparent and vulnerable. So we let it out there. We both cried.
Yeah. It's beautiful. It's so empowering. And you're right. It is okay to not be okay. But I get so annoyed with that phrase ending there, because it is okay to not be okay. It is not okay to do nothing about it, particularly when you're raising children, particularly when you are sworn to protect and serve the community. They deserve to have the best version of you. They deserve to have you put your best foot forward. And that's on you. We are responsible for that.
Absolutely.
And if you aren't a parent, or you're not a spouse, you're not somebody's spouse, or, it's just you, but you deserve to have this feeling. I tell you what, I know, and I know not everybody believes in God, but I do. I would not be alive if it were not for God's gift of extending my life. Nobody can change my mind about it. It's how I believe. It is what I believe. I am here because God said, you get to stay, but I have something I need you to do.
You have a job.
And I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. And some days when I feel myself like, whose bright idea was it to book this? I'm not feeling it today, right? Well, the alternative is you could be, 6 feet, 7, I don't know, under. Yeah. Or you could be in an urn somewhere on someone's mantle, right? I'm happy to be here. And you guys are so indicative of exactly what I try to relay out there. It's like, you can find a beautiful outlet for your pain and your trauma. You can heal. You can turn this situation into something that's going to create opportunity for you to be better. And that's all I want. That's all I want.
That's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. It's about, listen, let me show you what you can do if you're willing to do the work. That's what I wanted to do for my kids. Let me just show you this. It gets better. So, if you got listeners out there that are listening and watching you, then through your own stories, they're gonna get that hope. Through the stories of your guests, they're gonna get that hope. So I love what you guys are doing. I love that you're doing it together. I have to tell you, that is something that I have always, craved. I always wanted to, whenever I had another person in my life, which now I do, to do that together. You know what I mean? To do that together, to continue to heal together. And I'm blessed that I have a relationship, with my children's, with my baby daddy, my BD, as he likes to call it. He calls me BM, and I'm like, that sounds like bowel movement. I don't like it. He's like, what's up, BM? I'm like, no. But yeah, it's just like,
Dirty.
it's like, hey, man, we're all willing to take ours and show ours so that it can help somebody else. And man, I'm blessed. I have reached such a level of acceptance. God has put it in my chest, and I feel it, and it is well with my soul. It is well with my soul. I could leave this earth tomorrow, and I will feel so rich and blessed, and I know that I will have left a legacy here for people to find some kind of hope, and I think that's what we all should be doing.
We need to leave it a better place than we came in.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
We're getting close to the end.
All right.
So, are there any specific resources, books, or programs that you recommend for anyone battling PTSD?
Yes. I've read, so first of all, if you're a cop, you should definitely read Cop Shock. I don't know if anyone's ever told you about this book, Cop Shock. I'm going to make sure that I don't misspeak the author's name, but Cop Shock is a book that I think every cop should read. And this is what it looks like. It's by Alan R. Cates. And this is what it looks like. Cop Shock by Alan Cates. That is a book that I think is really, really great reading. I know everybody, especially if you're an old school cop, you get that emotional survival for law enforcement and all that stuff, but that's great. But there are other books out there. That's the only book I ever see getting passed around. Cop Shock. PTSD is a greater cop killer than all the guns ever fired at police officers. That is a true statement. So this book's basically it's surviving post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's really great reading for anybody that's looking to at least start to try to understand this process. Another one that I love and I read recently, I've actually read it twice, but it's called The Body Keeps the Score. The Body Keeps the Score is a book that is written by Bessel van der Kolk, and it looks like this. It's blue, and you can get it on Amazon. But what I liked about this book is it basically goes into the brain, mind, and body in the healing of trauma, which is that's my zhuzh, right? I want to know all about the brain, the mind, the body, because it's also super connected. You know what I mean? Like, I got so depressed. I was cycling in between depression and anxiety and all of the bad things. And I was my heaviest weight at 260 pounds. And that in and of itself can get depressing, right? Mm-hmm. So I gained a whole lot of weight. My body was not my gut health. My hair was falling out. Like, I couldn't shit. I couldn't stop pooping. Like, it was bad. It was bad. So, a lot of these things that we don't really, it doesn't stand out to us that it could be something else going on there, right? So I love The Body Keeps the Score because it really ties everything in together, and it really shows you how something that you possibly endured as a child is still very much attached to you and could be, the sand in your underwear, if you will, on your health, on your mental health, on your physical health, all of those things. So I really liked that book because I found it to be extremely informative on all of those things. And I'm one, not just to focus on one, but to focus on all. And very recently I've had to do that because, again, it took a long time to heal here, that I hadn't made any time to pick up the pieces physically. So I just recently, as of last January, not this year, but last January 24, I started working on that. I've dropped over 60 pounds. I have really, really been working because, it's all tied together. And again, the kids watch us, right? So yeah, I could go talking about healing and doing the work while I sit down and be a food blister. That doesn't work, right?
And we're on that same weight loss journey. I'm down over 100 pounds, and Britt's down over almost 100 pounds.
Yeah, I'm at 90.
And, wow, that's amazing.
And like you said, our son watches and he's like, I want to go to the gym. I want to eat healthy. And it makes such a difference.
It does.
And we all say, we're like, man, why didn't I do this before?
Yep.
Why did I do this before?
Yep.
I think you just don't realize too, like looking back at pictures of myself, I'm like, how did I let myself get to that weight?
Girl,
It
yes.
does. It affects your child. Like he started eating like us, and our 11-year-old's 5'6". He towers over me.
Wow.
So I can sneak him into the gym with me because he looks like he's 16 years old.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
But yeah, I mean, he loves going to the gym with us now, and just we're teaching him those healthy outlets, and
that's so good.
yeah, it's just
that's so
part
good.
of the journey.
That's so good. So yeah, the books. If you're a reading type, I would definitely spit those 2 books out there easily off the top of my head. There's a lot of really great books out there. Resources. I have lots of resources. Right now, what a lot of people will tend to do is they'll reach out to me and they book time with me. I'm not a doctor, never claimed to be a doctor, but what I am really great at is strategizing and showing people how to create a strategy, providing them with the framework for a strategy to start fighting, to start beating this opponent. And I always use this as an example. If you're a fighter, and let's just say, Ann and Bart are going to have a world title shot together, and I'm going to fight Bart for the world title. Brittany, you've already fought Bart, and, you lost. He beat you up. He wiped the floor with you. Am I going to go to Brittany and ask Brittany to spar with me and prep me? I absolutely am. You know why?
If you go after Bart.
Yeah, no, I absolutely am, and that's why I use this as an example, because just because Brittany lost to Bart doesn't mean Brittany lost the experience to getting in the ring with Bart. I lost to the fight after the fight too. That's what makes me so valuable in teaching you how to win. Now, if Brittany beat you, then I definitely want to use her, right? But the real barbacoa is when you can find somebody who has got their ass beat, came back for the rematch, and beat the hell out of that champion. And then they had another one, and that person beat him again. I did that. I lost the first fight with the fight after the fight. Then I came back to win. And then when I had another one, when I went through my divorce, it took the wind out of my sails. It was not expected. It was something that knocked me on my ass again. And I almost immediately went into this panic of feeling that same fear of losing. But then I was like, no, hold on a minute. And then to apply all of those tools, all of that training, all of the work that I'd been doing. And I navigated that divorce in a way that I was proud of, that didn't cost me 10 years of trauma to my life. You know what I'm saying? And and like I said, that I have a wonderful relationship with this person that I spent almost 20 years of my life with. So there's a lot to be said for enlisting the help of others who have been in the ring with this opponent. So I do that. I recognize that, and I do that. People call me, they book with me. I have an entire chest full of resources for people that, some people would work better with this type of resource. And so I can direct them there, because at the end of the day, the goal is to heal the brain. I am not a healer of the brain. I will never claim to be that, but I have a lot of resources that I can dig into to help people get to where they need to get. At the end of the day, though, they have to do the work. Yes.
And you give the tools to help people help themselves.
Yes. That's what I hope to do, right? And so when people want to sit down with me and book with me and have an hour or hour and a half to I call them mastermind sessions, let's have a mastermind session. Because, let's just face it, most first responders, they're not going to reach for a therapist right out the gate. They've done studies, law enforcement officers. I'm now on the EAP for a lot of EAP lists for some agencies that are out in California that have contracts, and I'm on their EAP list. Why? Because we should be giving them an option. A lot of them aren't being used because they don't want to talk to a therapist or they don't want to talk to a doctor. But maybe if they reach for a peer, as I'm trained extensively in peer support, if they reach for a peer and they start with peer support, this peer can teach them some of the things that I've learned, which will then in turn show them the value of that professional level help. That, hey, you got to go there. You can't win a championship and not train with a professional trainer. You've got to train with. You can't train yourself to win a championship. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen.
Would you mind if we share your info on our podcast at the bottom so that people can get a hold of you?
No, absolutely. Share it.
Awesome.
Share the email. Share the the phone number. The phone number that I gave you guys is what I use for the fight after the fight business. It's what people can text. It is not a 24-hour hotline. Okay. So if someone's in crisis, they need to be able to understand that it's not a 24-hour hotline. My social medias, I get messages directly. I connect with people there as well. So there's plenty of ways that people will be able to reach me. And I'm always down to help anybody, prep for the fight, but that the understanding being that I will not do the work for you. If I could do it, which I can't, I still wouldn't. Because at the end of the day, nobody stepped into the ring with me to win the championships I won, right? I had to do the training and I had to get in the ring.
Do the work,
you have to
put the work in.
And then go in there and apply it so you don't get your ass kicked, right? So that's the same for anybody else. You have to remain diligent in that and do that work yourself in order for you to appreciate the value of it. If you invest in yourself, you're gonna value it more. So
Absolutely.
so there's that. But I also wanted to say that I think what you guys are doing is incredibly important, and I think y'all are doing great. I really admire what you're doing, and it takes a special breed of people to take theirs and their pain and give it to someone else to kind of help them heal their own. And you guys are doing that. And I love locking arms with people that are doing that. So if there's ever anything that I can do to further help you guys in your mission, let me know. And I'm always going to try to help if I can. Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Of course.
Thank you. And we have one last one for you. Okay.
All right. What is it?
Before we wrap it up, if you could give our listeners, if you could leave them one message about resilience and healing, what would it be?
Don't wait to get ready until the moment that you find yourself needing to be ready. Don't do that. Try not to do that. You might be listening to this podcast and say, well, I'm not a cop. I'll never be in a shooting. Or I am a cop. I've been in 20 years. I'm about to retire. I've never been in a shooting, or I've never been, whatever it is that you could tell yourself, or, I didn't have a hard childhood growing up. I feel very well adjusted. I'm not a depressed person. I don't struggle with anxiety. I have a marriage, but it's a great marriage and my kids are well adjusted. That might be you. But don't think for 1 second that it can't be you, that it can't be one of your children. It happened to me, the person who was always prepared, the person who always put herself in a position to win and be successful, to succeed. It happened to the mom who was very involved with her kids, that didn't notice when they began to struggle. It happened that a marriage that I thought I could do anything to salvage, it didn't make it. It can happen to you. And one of the worst feelings that I have ever felt is to be in a situation where I needed to be ready for something and I was not. So my best advice would be train for resiliency ahead of time. If you're a law enforcement officer, if you're a man or a woman with a pulse breathing in this world today, train to protect yourself, train to protect your family. Unfortunately, it's the world we live in. If you never need it, you can be a gentle soul. But if you need to switch gear because someone else has chosen that scenario for you, you need to be ready. If you're a law enforcement officer, you need to be ready because it's dangerous out there. But not just ready for the fight that you could face on the street. Be ready for the fight that comes after the fight. Whether you're a cop, a firefighter, a dispatcher, an EMT, paramedic, whatever it is, teacher, stay-at-home mom. This is not, the fight after the fight is not just a cop problem. It is not a first responder issue. It is a human being issue. And if you want to put your children, if you have them, in the best, most optimal position to navigate through their own adversities and traumas, you got to get ready. So don't wait until you're suffering. Prepare now. Equip yourself with those tools now and then apply them, and avoid spending such an extended amount of time in the fight after the fight should you find yourself there one day.
Thank you so much. I know you're a very busy woman,
Yes.
and just for you to take that time and reach out to us so quickly, you don't know how much it meant to us. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate you being invited, you guys inviting me and hanging out with me. And now I want to ask you a question. She's like, oh, this is not how this works. And this is just for you. So you don't have to answer it unless you just really want to. But this is for you. My question to you is, tell your viewers something that you wish somebody would have told you way back when your huge fight after the fight happened. Tell your viewers something you wish somebody would have told you way back then when you first entered into yours. Give them a little nugget to get them ready. And then take that nugget and tell it to your kid.
It's a good one.
Yeah. So chew on it. Chew on it. Maybe I'll get an email from you or something.
You will. That's what I'll be thinking about all night tonight.
Yeah.
She's going to marinate. She's going to marinate on it.
She's going to marinate, percolate. I have fun hanging out, Bart and Brittany. That's so cute. It makes me gag. All right.
And we are forever in debt to you. Thank you so much for taking the time. Seriously, it means the world to us.
You're welcome. You go, I go.
Everyone,
peace out.
Thank you so much again.
Bye, y'all. Oh, that's cute. That's cute. He got confetti? Really?
Hall of Fame.
All right, Ed. Thank you.
See you guys. Bye.
See ya.